Entrepreneurship is often painted as a story of grit and hustle. But what about the moments when grit alone isn't enough? The sleepless nights, the unanswered emails, the endless notifications, the deals that fall through just when you thought you had them sealed. That's where mental toughness is forged. Not in the wins, but in the setbacks. Welcome back, listeners, to today's episode on the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today we are diving into the iron mind principles with someone who embodies resilience at every level. From globetrotting cybersecurity executive to Ironman athlete to addiction and grief coach, my guest, Kenny Stoddart, has faced not just business challenges but personal battles, including a stage 2B prostate cancer diagnosis. Instead of breaking him, these experiences have shaped Kenny's philosophy that true strength is found not in control, but in surrender. We'll explore how these principles apply to entrepreneurs who are navigating uncertainty, rejection, and burnout, and why listeners, mental toughness might just be less about pushing harder and more about shifting how we respond when life pushes back. So, Kenny, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute honor to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you, Sana. It's great to be here with you as well, and thank you for having me.
Um, Kenny, I think something that I um, really admire, and definitely this conversation is going to be a special one because here we are kind of flipping the script, especially when it comes to mental toughness. And one thing which I really am excited personally, and I hope our listeners are as well to explore, is that true strength that comes not from control but from surrender. So that's definitely something we are going to explore. But before that, um, when we talk about mental toughness in entrepreneurship, Kenny, it often gets confused with grind harder, push more, just go ahead. How do you personally define mental toughness and how does it differ from that hustle culture narrative?
Yeah, that's a. I love this question, and that hustle mentality is such a real thing especially in the technology space, where there's still that grind as hard as you can, close the largest deals. For me, I did that for a long time, and I realized that mental toughness is definitely defined. There's components of that grind that fit into that equation, but learning from the challenges that we face along the way, whether it be in entrepreneurship, in technology sales, some of the biggest lessons we learn are from the toughest losses or the toughest deals that didn't go our way, last minute decisions that didn't, go the way we expected them to. And, at the very highest level, I think we can break it down to that, everybody, whatever profession you're in, whatever you do, there's going to be bumps in the road and there's going to be challenges. And how we handle those challenges is where my definition of mental toughness comes in.
Hmm. Hmm. And Kenny, if I can reflect on this, specifically, not from a very entrepreneurial perspective, but, as just something about myself. So, um, I don't know the reason, could be because of the conditioning or maybe the experiences, past experiences. Failure, something for me, it gets me anxious. It
Mhm,
gets me to doubt upon myself.
mhm,
It brings a lot of self doubt, anxiety, sometimes a complete shutdown of yourself from everything. Um, how would you suggest, if an entrepreneur is in that particular mental state, would get on to being mentally tough and look for a solution in there, or maybe at least accept that yes, this is a failure, but let me figure out what to do.
yeah, and you're not alone. I mean, this is so common. failure is very, very difficult. My story begins with exceptional failure, as a younger teenager. But, you know, and I've faced failures all the way up until, this most recent diagnosis that you mentioned. But the reality of it is there's so much to learn from ourselves during these times, whether it be what you described as, just your own personal feelings about failure. The same thing goes for rejection, which is another term that I really dislike, because rejection and failure are two things that, you have like that they're not good, but
Mm.
you can make good of them. And what I would encourage people like yourself, you know, failing is putting your foot out there, putting your taking a little bit of a risk to advance yourself to be better. It's whether you're taking an online course or a class or a master's class or just a lesson in life. You are learning from that, and how you apply that and pass that message on to the future others, or to even yourself when you go about your business in the next way, that you've learned from some of those bumps in the road, rather than dwelling on them or beating yourself up. Um, that type of response where can escalate into bigger things that don't necessarily need to happen. We just need to give ourselves some grace, let us know that, failure or, making a mistake sometimes happens, and we learn from it and we get better from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of our listeners resonate with that because yes, exactly. And thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
being there for me, like in terms of, that I'm not alone in there. I think it may happen, or it would have happened with almost all of us. Like, and that
Absolutely.
moment of thinking that if I just work longer, if I push harder, I'll solve it. But as I mentioned, it's flipping the script. And it makes me wonder if toughness is actually more about boundaries than breaking points.
And this is what is so near and dear to me. Um,
Mhm.
I can talk to you about physical toughness and mental toughness. I've done, uh, you know, some of the most challenging events in the world. And, when it comes to life and everyday things, getting through these mental challenges or tough days, it all relates with how you choose to deal with them. Like I said, moving forward and making something positive from them, using strength or using adversity as strength. And that, whether it's running a race or running a business or running your day to day life, there's going to be ups and downs, there's going to be struggles, but how we're going to get through it. I think the best example is like I mentioned earlier, giving yourself a little bit of grace and saying, I got this. I talk to myself all the time because I'm also very critical of myself. But at the end of the day, now I'm learning grace, give myself, you know, a little bit of acceptance for doing the right things. And perhaps I didn't get all the things done that I wanted to today, but it'll be there tomorrow for me.
Totally. Totally. That's really inspiring, Jenny.
Mhm.
Now, let's talk about Iron Mind here. Now,
Mhm.
you have been an Ironman athlete.
Mhm.
You have been in the technology space. Then you're also an addiction and grief coach. You have had your personal battles. And entrepreneurship, it is basically swimming in uncertainty. And, new markets, unpredictable funding or economy, or even personal setbacks. So, what Iron Mind principle do you lean on most when the future feels completely unknown?
Yeah, I think the Iron Mind's mentality at the very highest level is just this, I've got this, and no is not an option. And, and I don't, there's a lot of, aggression, it sounds like, in that. But I really do mean when I say that no is not an option. And where the Iron Mind or the Iron Man mentality comes in, I've done, like you said, Iron Man races, and you know that last part of a race is a place where you have to go to, a place you might not know that you've had within you, but we all do. And it's tapping into this inner space where, I'm going to get through this. that translated into my recovery as well, where I decided that no matter what challenges I was going to face, and again, I have full respect for all of them because it is a very challenging process, but I tapped into what I call my iron minds mentality and said that failure is not an option. I'm going to conquer this. And essentially, that is what I am continuing to do today, living with that iron mind mentality. Recovery is never over; it's one day at a time. But I've put that into practice, and everybody can do that. With entrepreneurship is one of those races. It's one of those Ironmans. It's a Navy SEAL. I mean, you are being an entrepreneur is so risky, so challenging, the long hours, the passion that goes into it, the impact that it has on your life and potentially your health, the good, the bad, is just amazing. So, good entrepreneurs know what that iron minds mentality is, because they've tapped into it, just not knowing that I've actually labeled it.
That's actually such a beautiful take on entrepreneurship because
Mm.
um, in the popular media or in at a surface level, I mean there have been a lot of misconceptions around entrepreneurship that that it gives me freedom and it gives me a lot of time, free time. It's
Oh
glamorous.
yeah,
That's not the true picture. Um, it's I mean I shouldn't say it like it's a badge of honor, but you are you have that responsibility, that ownership of um, turning your idea to something tangible, something which can make an impact. And then you have people who are working with you to make that idea, that dream into reality. So I think somebody who gets into that mental state, they wouldn't even mind dedicating their free hours. I mean, of course, always having that sense of when to dedicate hours for themselves, time for themselves and their families and loved ones, but also to have that, sanity of that, okay, this is the time I need to focus on this particular thing to solve this problem. So I think that definitely needs a lot of mental
yeah,
toughness.
absolutely, and making it fun. I mean, I think
Yes.
there's a difference between you. You can start a business and you can be an entrepreneur. Um, an entrepreneur, I mean, I just recently did it again with my most current business after, like, I think my profile mentioned I was in the cybersecurity space for 27 years and just had an amazing career that I'm so grateful for. But I pivoted, and became an entrepreneur again. And, I started my Iron Mind Advisors business, you know,
Okay.
from literally writing the first piece of content to registering the domain name to setting up hosting services, building a web page, writing content, social media strategy, literally. And, I'm having a great time with it. Don't get me wrong, but hours upon hours of, looking at the screen and doing what we need to do to get ready. That's what entrepreneurship is. And then not hoping that it's going to be successful because we don't hope, you're tapping into this iron mind mentality, we don't hope for anything. We assume that the outcome is going to be great. Now, the definition of great may be different for people, and that's just fine. But we are on a mission as entrepreneurs to be successful. And, any thought otherwise is really not going to set up for, a successful run.
Hmm. Hmm. And I'll come to burnout, the aspect of burnout here, Kenny. But before that, let's look at. I think this is going to be the highlight of this conversation.
Mhm.
Finding strength in surrender. Now, this is a bit counterintuitive. Your philosophy it centers on strength forged in surrender. It's kind of contradictory to the traditional entrepreneurial mindset. So for all of us, Kenny, if we can unpack how surrender becomes a form of strength.
Yeah, absolutely. When it relates to my career in the technology space, I had a very successful career that I'm very proud of. It also came with a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, Um, I was numbers driven. I wanted to eh, overachieve always. It was just not an option. Now, I did not always, but the intention was always there. Um, I wore it when I did not. Um, and I was passionate about my jobs and my roles and hitting quotas and such. Um, I my temperament changed over as I got later into my career where, you know, work is just a part of our very important and lovely lives. And I sacrificed a lot of those times over the years during my 20s and 30s. I was traveling all over the world, and I was doing some phenomenal business meetings and transactions and just meeting people and cultures. It was lovely, but it caused burnout. And surrendering in this situation is not giving up on that. It's recognizing where you want to spend your time and how important it is and how you can make work fun, right? So being surrendering is the ability to make a difficult decision. In my case, I decided to divert from an industry that I was very, very comfortable in to a completely different one, meaning mental health, where I want to help others, not only in the addiction realm, but with being entrepreneurs, where you can apply some of these principles of surrendering to the fact that it's going to take hard work, it's going to pay off. Let's have fun doing it, and let's not neglect these other things in our life that are so important to us: family, friends, wellness, and such.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a radical reframe, like surrender as a strategy, Kenny. And
Mhm.
I think like of entrepreneurs who cling to every detail versus those who learn to let go and trust the process. Um, I mean, how do you teach founders, who are, let's say, very, very wired to control outcomes? How do you teach them to embrace surrender without feeling like they're giving up? Because that is natural. That will come, but how would you like get them
Yeah,
started?
it's a reframing. I don't, surrender is a tough word because it almost associates itself with giving up. Well, I associate it with giving in or growing up. Um, Surrendering is not giving up by any means. Surrendering is taking a look at the things that are out of your control and learning how to spend more time with the ones that are in your control and learning how to delegate and learning how to time management. A lot of those things are examples of that term surrender, but it really is a growth opportunity to, some of the greatest CEOs that we follow, went through this learning curve where they had to learn how to delegate and not be in charge of every line item or every product that goes off the shelf. Um, it's surrendering in some form or fashion for the better outcome of not only yourself, but for your fellow employees, your business, and so on and so forth. Stockholders, if he gets to that level, but surrendering to the fact that it's especially from a scalability perspective, you cannot
Mhm.
control everything. You have to rely on the smart people that you put around you.
Mm, yeah. I think that's not weakness, it's wisdom.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's weaknesses, and that's how I approach some of these other obstacles in my life. I mean, no one wants a cancer diagnosis, and certainly I don't. I'm still, I'm dealing with it, but there's only one way to go for me, right? It's up. I'm going to address it. I'm going to continue to enjoy my life, continue to grow my business and having fun with it. And um, the same goes with business. I mean, losing a deal usually has huge financial implications for people personally, and then it rolls up to the company, to the board members, to the stockholders. It hurts, but we have to continue on. Life goes on. The job goes on. We have to learn from it, what we could have done better, and then step forward.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, now let's come back to burnout before we wrap up, Kenny.
Mhm.
It is definitely now there's a difference between like when it comes to stress, there is good stress, there is bad stress.
Mhm.
Then there is good bacteria, bad bacteria. So it's always a nuanced conversation. There is no black and white here. But let's talk about how burnout, it is almost like a badge of honor in startup culture, but it's also one of the biggest killers of creativity. How have you personally confronted burnout, and what role do Iron Mind principles play in recovery?
Yeah, and so I've never with burnout, I've never really seen it end well. It's, a good burnout, um, especially for entrepreneurs, those all-night workers, the coffee drinkers, the people that never wanna sleep because they are so passionate about growing their business. Yeah, a lot gets done, but a lot gets done negatively too to people's health and to their relationships and whatnot. The iron mind mentality, you know, we wanna encourage that level of commitment and whatnot, but we wanna also encourage, how do you transform that into smart working and, taking time away from the office and,
Mhm.
taking days off when necessary and, making sure you're not jeopardizing your relationships. These are things that last with you forever. I'm a living proof of that. The relationships that I've developed over the last 30 years, more than that, going back to college and obviously my friends from high school are near and dear to me. These are things that you can jeopardize them over the years. I have not. I am so close to so many of my friends because
Mhm.
I made it a point, right? And it's very this is just an example of how quickly people can lose track because they get wrapped up in their work and then burnout, can have unhealthy endings too, right? So it's just important to keep things in perspective. We all want to bottle up that passion and work as hard as we can, but working smart is the new cool I like. I mean, I love to work hard, but I also like to work smart. I don't want to do 18, 12-hour days anymore. Those days are behind me. Not that I'm not willing to, but let's work smart. Let's figure out how we can be efficient, use technology, and then move forward from there.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I think that is the raw truth here. Like even the strongest entrepreneurs hit that wall, but the difference is how we respond after.
Mm,
Uh, because sometimes like if we talk about the on about the other end, like
mhm.
uh, you can avoid burnout with enough self-care, but
Yeah,
then how exactly you would plan those moments? How would you plan? Because if you're working too much, it's kind of killing your creativity. But if you're not able to balance, or maybe that difference between self-care and dedicating time for yourself and your family or relationships,
yeah.
it's kind of getting blurred, then I think that balance or that harmony is difficult to achieve.
Absolutely, and I mentioned before where I feel like I've done a great job with my relationships for the most part with my friends, but, I would be remiss to say that, burnout for me ended in near death. I mean, it ended in
Mm.
unfortunately with, alcoholism and then recovery and, several like, it was uh, burnout for me was not great, and my mission is just to talk to people about making sure that they can avoid that if at all possible, because I think our long-term health is so critical to obviously, but I think our long-term health should be our number one goal. Thinking about these things before it's too late is so important.
Exactly. I really appreciate that, Kenny. Really
Mhm.
appreciate it. Great. So before we conclude, if our listeners they would like to connect with you, Kenny, and also get on to explore the Iron Mind principles, how they can apply in their lives, what would be the easiest way?
Yeah, the easiest way is my website at www.ironmindadvisors.com. There's some general information there on how to reach out to me. I do some social media stuff, but at the end of the day, what I'm just trying to do is make sure that people are taking care of themselves and thinking about their health as they go through these amazing business opportunities and be there to enjoy and reap the rewards of all their hard work.
Great. So, listeners, what I'll do for all of you is I'll have all the details mentioned in the show notes so that you can easily reach out to Kenny and get to explore the Ironman principles and all the resources that he's sharing. And as we wrap up today's conversation, what I can take away from here is that entrepreneurship isn't just about building companies, it is such a beautiful opportunity of building ourselves in the process. And Kenny's story shows us that toughness isn't about never falling, it's about learning to stand back up, sometimes in ways that surprise us as well. So, thank you so much, Kenny. Thank you for showing us
My
that there is
pleasure.
the absence of struggle. Thank you. Oh, great. And to all the listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of This Blend. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.